When I was pastor at St. Peter's in Mansfield, I had a number of good colleagues among the clergy of the other denominations. And one of those was a pastor of a little Protestant church just a few blocks away. His name was Terry, Pastor Terry. And Terry was a big man. He had a booming voice. I think in a previous career, he had been a coach in high school. He became a minister. He was loved. He preached well. He had a great sense of humor. I liked him. I liked being around him. Unfortunately, Pastor Terry also had health issues, and he was facing surgery. In fact, it was a pretty risky surgery, and he knew that the odds were 50-50 whether or not he would survive. And yet, it would also be terribly risky not to have the surgery. So before he went into the hospital, Terry sat down and wrote 3 letters. He wrote one letter to his wife, one letter to his 3 young adult children, and one letter to the congregation. All 3 of them he put in an envelope, sealed them, with the directions that they should be read aloud at his funeral if he did not survive the surgery. Sadly, Terry did not survive. So when the day of the funeral came, a small congregation, but the church was full. And at one point, the presiding minister said, we have these 3 letters, and we're going to honor Pastor Terry's request that they be read aloud. Now, personally, I think that the wife and the kids already knew what was in the letters, that they had shared that before they read them publicly. But they had one person read each of the 3 letters. And the first letter to the wife basically said something like, thank you for always being with me, especially when I've kind of neglected you, accepting my change of career and my new ministry and spending so much time with the church. Thank you, but I want you to know my love is strong, and love is stronger than death. My love goes on. The second letter to the adult kids basically allowed him to say how proud he was of them, their accomplishments and what they were doing with their lives, that they were living well. But he also challenged them. He said, you have so much potential and so much to give. Make sure it happens. Let it develop. We want you to grow and live up to all that you could be. Then came the letter to the congregation. And I think that's where I tuned in most, because I found myself thinking, what would I say to a congregation? And in this letter, he started by apologizing for not being the perfect pastor and maybe not living up to their expectations or his own expectations. But then he also told them how thrilled he had been to be their pastor and how he enjoyed working with them as a community. But then he got into a very controversial subject. This congregation, which was small, had a sister parish of the same denomination on the other side of town. It was also small. And there had been dialogue about should the 2 churches merge? And if so, what would it be like? So in his letter, he told the people, please follow up on this question. Continue to pray over it, continue to study it, look at all the possibilities, but I encourage you to reach out to the people of our other church. How can we work together? I think people were struck by the words of Pastor Terry. And whether or not he knew it at the time, he was basically saying 3 important things. He said, love, stronger than death. He said, there's all kinds of potential, develop it and allow it to take place in your hearts. And the third one is seek unity. Those 3 words, those 3 phrases are also found in the scriptures, that section we're starting today. You see, we are entering what's called the farewell discourse in John's gospel. You know, we often talk about people leaving a last will and testament, and, you know, they read it after somebody's death, and it's usually about, you know, who gets the estate or who gets to inherit special fortunes, or maybe even the family heirloom. But there's so many other ways we leave things to others. And Pastor Terry, and certainly Jesus in the gospel, he was giving his disciples, he was laying out for them, this is what I'm leaving for you. Now, this farewell discourse is not short. It's 4 chapters long. It starts today. Jesus says, do not let your hearts be troubled. Chapter 14, verse 1. It goes through chapter 14, 15, 16, and 17. And it's neatly inserted in the gospel between the Last Supper, which is chapter 13, and chapter 18, when Jesus goes into the garden, is arrested, and then he goes on to the crucifixion. You can almost picture Jesus at the end of the Last Supper, sitting back with his disciples, and he says, by the way, folks, I have some words I need to share with you. Now, the church does not read these passages publicly between Holy Thursday night, the Last Supper, and Good Friday morning. Rather, we do them at this time of the year, every year. At the end of the Easter season, as we look forward to the Ascension, the Feast of the Ascension, which is only 2 weeks away. It's a way of saying, okay, Jesus is leaving us in this physical, bodily presence. So what's the message he's going to give to us? And it's those same 3 terms: love, and love is stronger than death; allow the potential to come out; and certainly seek unity. It starts today, it continues. You'll hear more next week. And during the weekday masses, you're going to hear quite a bit of it. Basically, what Jesus is saying is, love is so strong. My love for you goes on. In fact, in chapter 15, the image of the vine and the branches, he says, remain in my love, and I will remain in you. And it's a love that is not just a passive or a feeling or like, oh, yeah, God loves us, that's great. It's a dynamic love. It's a love that instills a fire within us. It's filled with enthusiasm and excitement and passion. The other thing about developing the potential, that image that Terry gave to his adult children, Jesus does the same thing, and we're going to hear it next week when Jesus promises. He says, I will send my advocate, the Spirit, that's going to empower you so that you can become more than you presently are. Use all that's within you. We often can't do that alone. And unity, well, we find unity everywhere. The vine and the branches remain in the love, but we also find the unity in the gospel today, in that dialogue with Philip. And Philip says, show us the Father. And he says, I am in the Father. If you know me, you know the Father. The unity of the Father and the Son and the Spirit. And this becomes a model for us for unity. We're not living during those days between Jesus' resurrection and ascension, historically, but we're, in a sense, always living during this same era, where we allow what was going on in the early church to take place in our lives, that we pick up the message, that we discover we are the disciples, and now it's up to us to be the church, to be the extension of Christ. This could be the entire homily. This could be the end right here. This could be. But I'm also very aware today's Mother's Day. And even though my mother's been gone for 25 years, I can hear in the back of my mind Mom saying something like, oh, by the way, Herb, don't forget to include mothers in the homily. So that's what I'm doing. Mothers, every mother does the same thing. They want the people to know that their love goes on. They want people, their kids especially, to develop all their talents and skills. They want unity. I remember my mom often would say to us kids before she died, she'd say, after I'm gone, I hope you kids still get along with each other. And we'd often say, of course, Mom, we will. We like each other. That's easy. I've since discovered that many mothers have that very same wish for their children, because somehow they see that as a sign of their own love and their own growth, and that they gave their children what the children need. So moms, thank you for what you've done. Thank you for accepting the vocation of being a disciple of Jesus in a particular way as a mother. And we want you to know we are always praying for you that you live this ministry well. God bless you.